Ambience. Tonight, we enter the shadows of feudal Japan once more as we stealthily traverse the dangerous world of Tenchu. And if you find that this deadly tale resonates with your inner shinobi, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing for more content like this. It helps ensure that this video doesn't get banished into another realm alongside Lord Mayo. I would appreciate it. But for now, sip some herbal tea and get cozy as we embark on another deadly mission into the world of Tenchu. The autumn wind carried the scent of the sea up the mountainside, rustling through crimson maples that surrounded the compound of the Azuma ninja clan. Rikimaru meditated in the gazebo overlooking the garden, his breathing nearly imperceptible. Though his eyes were closed, he sensed the presence approaching from behind, swift, deliberate, almost silent. Almost. In one fluid motion, he pivoted and raised his blade, meeting Ayame's twin daggers with a metallic ring that scattered a murder of crows from a nearby tree. "Your footfall on the third plank betrayed you," he said, his voice calm as still water. Ayame's eyes narrowed, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. "I'll keep that in mind for next time." They disengaged, both stepping back gracefully. Ayame wore her customary attire, her dark hair framing a face that could shift from playful to deadly in the space of a heartbeat. In contrast, Rikimaru's black outfit and silver hair gave him an almost ghostly appearance among the autumn foliage. "Lord Goda's messenger arrived," she said, sheathing her daggers. "We're summoned to the castle immediately." Rikimaru nodded, sliding his katana into its scabbard with a soft click. Did he say why? Only that it concerns a matter of grave importance to the province. Ayame glanced at the distant coastline visible through the trees, where foreign ships dotted the harbour. And that it involves the Western traders. Lord Goda's castle stood as it had for generations, a testament to power and tradition rising above the provincial capital. Within its innermost chamber, the Lord himself sat upon a raised platform, his trusted advisor, Sekiya, at his side. As Rikimaru and Ayame knelt before him, Goda's expression remained grave. "Faithful servants of the Azuma," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Troubling reports have reached me from our agents in the port town of Kanatsu. The Western merchants who have established their guild there are not what they appear to be." Sekiya unfurled a scroll bearing unfamiliar script. "According to our informant, several of these foreigners are trained killers, using trade as cover for a plot against our province, and potentially the entire region." Lord Goda continued. "They have allied with traitors among our own people, including Masai Himura, once a respected merchant of this province." "What are your orders, my lord?" Rikimaru asked, his head bowed. "You will each undertake a separate mission that, together, will expose and eliminate this threat. Goda turned to Rikimaru. You will infiltrate the Western Merchant Guild. Discover what weapons they have smuggled, what allies they have corrupted, and their ultimate objective. He then addressed Ayame. Our informant is Yumiko, daughter of a tea house owner in Kanatsu. She has provided valuable information, but her position grows precarious. You will protect her while continuing to gather intelligence on the foreigners themselves, particularly a Russian woman named Katerina Volkov and a monk called Brother Sebastian. Their blood will water the ground at your command, Lord Goda, Ayame said, her voice cold with determination. Goda raised a hand. Not yet. First, we must understand the full extent of their plot. Kill only when necessary, until we know what we face. As they rose to leave, Lord Goda addressed them one last time. Be swift, my shadows. I sense our enemies moving against us, and I fear an attack is imminent. The two ninjas bowed deferentially before swiftly disappearing. Outside the castle, they moved as two shadows merging into the gathering darkness, bound for a town where ancient traditions and foreign ambitions were about to collide. Kanatsu's port district hummed with activity even as midnight approached. Sailors from distant shores mingled with local merchants and laborers, their languages creating a strange harmony beneath the light of paper lanterns. Rikimaru moved like a ghost along the rooftops, a shadow among shadows. The Western Merchant Guild occupied what had once been the compound of a wealthy daimyo who had fallen from favor. Its high walls and strategic position overlooking both the harbor and the town made it an ideal headquarters and a challenging infiltration target. Rikimaru observed the patrol patterns of the guards for nearly an hour. Most were Japanese mercenaries, but among them walked men with pale skin and hair of various colors, their movements betraying military training rather than merchant backgrounds. Their weapons, too, were noteworthy, a mix of traditional Japanese swords and foreign firearms. A covered wagon approached the compound's gate, laden with large wooden crates. As the guards inspected it, Rikimaru leaped from the rooftop and onto the wall. Inside the compound, he vanished into the shadow of a storehouse. The main building ahead would hold offices and living quarters, but the crates being unloaded into the storehouse likely contained whatever contraband the guild was smuggling. He waited until the workers retreated, then slipped inside through a high window. The interior was stacked with crates of various sizes, many bearing foreign markings. Rikimaru carefully opened one of the newly arrived containers. Inside, nestled in straw, lay disassembled firearms, more advanced than any he had seen before. Rifles with complex mechanisms and pistols small enough to hide in a sleeve. Another crate revealed vials of liquid that gave off a faint, acrid smell. Poison, perhaps, or some foreign alchemical weapon. But the third crate made him pause. It contained scrolls and maps, detailed renderings of Lord Goda's castle, the provincial capital, and several other strategic locations throughout the region. One map was marked with red circles around water sources. Another showed the patrol routes of Goda's personal guard. A sound at the door gave him barely enough warning to conceal himself among the higher crates. Two men entered, one Japanese and one Western. The weapons will be distributed to our allies within the week, the Japanese man said, his dialect marking him as from the capital. But Himura-san is concerned about the ninja. There are rumors they've been alerted. The Westerner laughed. Let them come. Katerina has dealt with their kind before in China, and the ghost assures us he knows their every technique. Don't underestimate the Azuma, the Japanese man warned, especially the one they call Rikimaru. Ninjutsu superstition, the Westerner scoffed. Just focus on your part, Tanaka, and you will be, well, rewarded. After they left, Rikimaru remained motionless, processing this information. The plot was more advanced than Lord Goda had realized. Not just assassins, but what appeared to be a coordinated military strike. And who was this ghost they mentioned? Rikimaru's eyes narrowed, determined to uncover the mystery. Across town, in the lantern-lit warmth of the Jade Blossom Tea House, Ayame knelt across from a young woman whose hands trembled slightly as she poured tea. "You're certain you weren't followed here?" Yumiko asked, her hushed tone laced with apprehension. "No one follows me unless I wish it," Ayame replied, sipping her drink. The tea house was busy enough to mask their conversation, filled with local merchants and a few foreigners enjoying an evening of sake and entertainment. Yumiko glanced nervously at a group of Western traders. "The woman hasn't arrived yet, but she comes most evenings." Katerina Volkov. She presents herself as the wife of a Russian fur trader, but I've seen her training in the compound garden with techniques no merchant's wife would know. "And the monk?" Ayame asked. "Brother Sebastian visits the poorest districts, offering medicines and prayers. The people trust him." Yumiko leaned closer. "But 3 nights ago, I saw him meet with Himura and a ninja clad in black with a blood-red mask. They exchanged scrolls and spoke of a cleansing fire coming to the province." Ayame's expression remained neutral, but inwardly she tensed. A ninja in a red mask could be from several rival clans, or a rogue agent selling his skills to the highest bidder. "There's more," Yumiko continued. "They're bringing something, or someone, from the largest Western ship tomorrow night. Something they call the final component." The tea house door slid open, and conversation momentarily halted. A woman entered, her Western dress modified to suggest Japanese influence. Her hair was the color of fire, pulled severely back to accentuate sharp cheekbones and piercing green eyes. Behind her followed a man in monk's robes, his head shaved, a serene smile contrasting with eyes that missed nothing. "That's them," Yumiko whispered. "Katerina and Brother Sebastian." Ayame observed them without turning her head. The woman moved with the balanced precision of a trained fighter, despite her elaborate dress. The monk, though projecting an air of gentle humility, placed himself where he could see every exit. "I should go," Yumiko said, "if they recognize me speaking to a stranger." "Remain calm," Ayame advised. "Finish your tea naturally. I'm merely a traveler seeking directions." But as Katerina surveyed the room, her gaze lingered on their table a moment too long. She whispered something to Sebastian, whose gentle smile never wavered as he nodded. "She suspects," Yumiko breathed, fear evident in her voice. "Then we change our approach," Ayame said. She approached the foreigner's table directly, bowing with practiced deference. "Forgive my intrusion," she said in deliberately accented Japanese. "I am new to Kanatsu and seek employment. I was told the Western Guild sometimes hires local help." Katerina assessed her with cold calculation. "What skills do you offer?" "I am trained in the service of noble houses," Ayame replied. "I can clean, cook, and remain invisible when privacy is desired." Sebastian's eyes crinkled with apparent kindness. "We could indeed use help preparing for tomorrow's ceremony," he said in flawless Japanese. "The arrival of our distinguished guest requires proper arrangements." "Come to the guild compound at dawn," Katerina instructed. "We shall see if you are suitable." Ayame bowed again and returned to Yumiko's table. "They've invited the snake into their nest," she whispered with grim satisfaction. "Now leave separately from me and go directly to your home. Bar the doors tonight." After Yumiko departed, Ayame lingered, sipping her tea while maintaining awareness of the foreigners. They conversed quietly in their own language, occasionally glancing in her direction. Then a third figure entered, a Japanese man in expensive merchant clothing. Masai Himura had arrived, completing the trio of conspirators Lord Goda had warned about. But after he joined Katerina and Sebastian, the trio quickly retreated to a back room. Ayame rose, deciding there was little more to gain here. She would need to watch the compound from outside before presenting herself at dawn. Whatever, or whoever was arriving tomorrow night, she needed to learn more about it first. As she left the tea house, Ayame sensed eyes following her. In a reflective puddle on the street, she caught a glimpse of a figure on the rooftop behind her. Someone was watching, and they were skilled enough that she had almost missed them. The hunt had begun, but it wasn't yet clear who was predator and who was prey. The next evening found Rikimaru concealed among the heavy cargo of a warehouse near the main pier. For hours, he had been following Masai Himura as the merchant moved between the guild compound and various locations throughout Kanatsu, meeting with local officials, ship captains, and what appeared to be disguised warriors. Now Himura stood at the edge of the pier, watching as a boat rowed toward shore from the largest western vessel in the harbour. The night had brought fog rolling in from the sea, cloaking much of the activity on the water, but Rikimaru's trained eyes could discern 4 figures in the approaching boat, 3 rowing and 1 sitting motionless amidships. From the shadows of a nearby alley emerged Brother Sebastian. He joined Himura at the pier's edge, his robes rippling in the damp breeze. "Is everything prepared?" the monk asked. Himura nodded. "The components are assembled. We need only the knowledge this one brings to activate the device." "And Lord Goda's ninja? Any sign of them?" "The ghost believes the female ninja infiltrated the compound today, posing as a servant. She is being monitored." Rikimaru's jaw tightened. Ayame had penetrated the compound but might be walking into a trap. He would need to complete his investigation quickly and find a way to warn her. The boat reached the pier, and the central figure was helped to shore, an elderly Western man with a wild mane of white hair and spectacles that caught the light of the dock lanterns. He carried a leather satchel clutched tightly to his chest. Professor, Sebastian greeted him. Welcome to Japan. The old man looked around nervously. I was promised payment in advance, and assurance that my work will only be used for the demonstration, not for... All as agreed, Himura interrupted smoothly. The gold awaits you at the compound, along with your accommodations. This way, please. As the group moved toward a waiting carriage, Rikimaru slipped from his hiding place, intending to follow. But a whisper of movement above made him freeze. A figure in black dropped silently from the warehouse roof, landing between Rikimaru and his quarry. The newcomer wore a mask of crimson that seemed to float in the darkness like a bloodstain. In each hand, he held a kama, the sickle-like weapons favored by certain ninja clans. Rikimaru of the Azuma, the masked figure said, his voice carrying a mocking edge. You've grown predictable in your methods. Rikimaru drew his katana. You have the advantage of knowing my name. Don't you recognize an old companion? The figure removed his mask, revealing a face half handsome, half ruined by a jagged scar that ran from temple to jaw. Takeshi, though they call me the Ghost now. Recognition dawned on Rikimaru. Takeshi had trained alongside him and Ayame as children, but had disappeared during a mission years ago, presumed dead. You betrayed Lord Goda, Rikimaru stated, circling slowly. I chose power over servitude, Takeshi replied. The Westerners bring change that cannot be stopped. Their weapons, their science. Japan will transform or perish. And your role in all this? What do you stand to gain from this transformation? Takeshi laughed. Power, position, and a chance to repay my debt to you and the kunoichi who left me to die. He attacked with blinding speed, kama whirling in deadly arcs. Rikimaru parried and countered, but quickly realized Takeshi had incorporated foreign techniques into his assault, creating an unpredictable style. They fought across the pier, their weapons catching occasional gleams from the distant lanterns. Rikimaru maintained his focus, studying Takeshi's patterns, waiting for the opening that would inevitably come. When it did, a slight overextension by Takeshi, Rikimaru struck. His blade sliced through fabric and flesh, but the masked assassin merely laughed. First blood to you, he acknowledged, but we will finish this later. He hurled black powder into the air that ignited with a blinding flash, momentarily robbing Rikimaru of sight. When his vision cleared, Takeshi was gone. In his place lay a folded paper crane. Rikimaru quickly moved to higher ground, scanning for both Takeshi and the carriage carrying the Western professor. The latter had just disappeared around a corner toward the guild compound. The former was nowhere to be seen. Unfolding the paper, Rikimaru found a message inside. The kunoichi walks into the spider's web. Will you abandon your mission to save her, old friend? Choose quickly. The implication was clear. Ayame was in danger, and Takeshi was forcing him to choose between following the professor to learn more about the plot or warning his fellow ninja. Rikimaru made his decision. He would continue following the professor and the conspiracy's leaders. Ayame was skilled, the most skilled kunoichi of the Azuma clan. She would sense the trap, and in 3 hours they were scheduled to meet at the abandoned shrine above Kanatsu. If she didn't appear, he would know she needed assistance. With that resolution, He vanished into the fog-laden streets, following the carriage's path toward answers that grew more disturbing with each discovery. Inside the Western Merchant Guild compound, Ayame moved silently through the servants' quarters. She had spent the day cleaning, serving food, and listening, gathering fragments of information. The foreigners spoke freely around her, assuming she couldn't understand their languages. Their mistake had yielded valuable intelligence. She now knew that something called the device was being assembled in the cellar. That tonight's arrival, some Western scientist who would complete the final preparations, and that, within 3 days, during Lord Goda's autumn festival, they planned to strike. However, details of the device itself remained elusive. Was it a weapon, or something else entirely? Ayame needed to see it for herself. She slipped through the kitchen, past storerooms, and to a heavy wooden door with iron bands. It was locked, but the simple mechanism yielded to her picks within seconds. Beyond lay stone steps descending into darkness. At the bottom, a faint blue-green glow emanated from beneath another door. Ayame pressed her ear against it and heard nothing. Carefully, she eased it open. The cellar was larger than expected, a cavernous space that might once have been a daimyo's treasure room. Now it contained tables laden with strange equipment, glass tubes, metal containers, and devices whose purpose she couldn't fathom. The eerie glow came from a central apparatus, a metal sphere surrounded by smaller glass containers filled with luminescent liquid. Ayame approached cautiously. The sphere had symbols etched into its surface, some Japanese, others in foreign scripts. She recognized enough to understand they were measurements and warnings. Inside the glass containers, the glowing substance moved strangely, seeming almost alive. "Beautiful, isn't it?" came a woman's voice from behind her. Ayame whirled, daggers appearing in her hands as if conjured. Katerina Volkov stood in the doorway, no longer dressed in modified Western fashion, but in a close-fitting black outfit. "The moment you entered the tea house, I knew what you were," Katerina continued, stepping into the room. "Your posture, your awareness. A common servant doesn't move like a predator." "And you're no merchant's wife," Ayame replied, assessing distances and angles for the coming fight. Katerina smiled. "I was the Tsar's finest blade before accepting this more lucrative arrangement." She drew 2 slender swords from back sheaths. "In Russia, we have legends of the ninja. I've always wondered how they would match against our techniques." "What is this device?" Ayame demanded, stalling while searching for advantages in the environment. "A gift from Western science." Katerina circled slowly. "The professor calls it concentrated destruction. A single sphere, properly placed in a water source, can eliminate everyone who drinks from it over several days. No taste, no color once diluted. Just death that seems like a wasting disease." Mass poisoning, Ayame realized. Why? What does the West gain from Lord Goda's death? Goda refuses to open his province fully to trade. With him gone, we create opportunity. Katerina lunged suddenly, her blades a silver blur. Ayame parried and leapt backward, using a table for cover. The fight was confined to the cellar, limiting her acrobatic techniques, but the shadows and obstacles could work to her advantage. They exchanged a flurry of strikes, testing each other's defenses. Katerina fought with clinical precision, a style emphasizing efficiency over flourish. Ayame matched her with the fluid adaptability of Azuma techniques. During a momentary separation, Ayame grabbed a glass container and hurled it at Katerina, who slashed it mid-air. The glowing liquid inside splashed across her arm, and she hissed in pain as it began smoking on contact with her skin. "Careless," Katerina snarled, wiping the substance away. "But it will take more than that." She renewed her attack with increased ferocity. One of her blades sliced Ayame's sleeve, drawing a thin line of blood across her forearm. Ayame responded by dropping to the floor and sweeping Katerina's legs, following with a kick that sent one of her swords clattering away. As they fought, the door at the top of the stairs opened again. Light spilled down, accompanied by voices. Himura, Sebastian, and others, escorting the professor to examine his creation. Katerina smiled coldly. "It seems our duel will have an audience." Ayame glanced at the approaching lights, then at the sphere on the table. A decision crystallized in her mind. She couldn't defeat all of them and escape with information about the plot, but she could ensure the device never reached Lord Goda's water supply. With a quick movement, she threw a smoke bomb at the stairs, momentarily blinding and confusing the newcomers. Then she leapt toward the central table, daggers raised to destroy the sphere. Katerina anticipated her intent and hurled a throwing dagger. It struck Ayame's shoulder, throwing off her attack. Instead of piercing the sphere, her blade glanced off its surface, creating a spark. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The sphere began to pulse with intensified light, and the glass containers around it vibrated. "Fool!" shouted a new voice. The professor, pushing past the others. "You've activated the failsafe mechanism. It will release all its energy at once." "How long?" demanded Himura, drawing his sword. "Minutes. Maybe less." The professor was already retreating up the stairs. "The blast will destroy half the compound." In the confusion, Katerina launched herself at Ayame, tackling her away from the increasingly unstable device. "You've killed us all," she hissed. Ayame broke free of her grip and delivered a sharp strike to Katerina's throat, momentarily disabling her. The compound was already erupting into chaos above, with shouts and running footsteps as people fled the impending explosion. Hurling another smoke bomb, Ayame raced up the stairs. She needed to escape the blast radius and make her rendezvous with Rikimaru. Together, they could still stop whatever secondary plans the conspirators had in place. As she emerged into the night air, alarms were sounding throughout the compound. Guards ran in confusion, some fleeing, others attempting to maintain order. Through the chaos, Ayame spotted a familiar figure on a rooftop across the courtyard, a ninja in a blood-red mask, watching the pandemonium with evident satisfaction. For a moment, their eyes met. The masked ninja offered a mocking bow before disappearing into the darkness. Ayame had no time to pursue. With the device counting down to destruction, she needed to put distance between herself and the compound. She scaled the nearest wall, vaulted over, and began making her way toward the abandoned shrine where Rikimaru would be waiting. Behind her, the night sky suddenly blazed with unearthly light as the Western device fulfilled its deadly promise. The abandoned shrine stood on a forested ridge overlooking Kanatsu, its weathered torii gate and moss-covered stone lanterns testament to years of neglect. Rikimaru knelt in its inner sanctuary, eyes closed in meditation, but senses alert to every sound and movement around him. The explosion at the guild compound had illuminated the entire town briefly, followed by a thunderclap that echoed across the bay. From his vantage point, Rikimaru had watched as flames engulfed buildings and people fled into the streets. Whatever device the Westerners had created, it had clearly malfunctioned or been deliberately sabotaged. Ayame's work, he suspected. But would she make it to their rendezvous? His question was answered as a shadow detached itself from the trees outside, moving with a slight irregularity that suggested injury. Rikimaru remained still, verifying it was indeed his fellow ninja before revealing his position. "The guild compound is destroyed," Ayame said as she entered, one hand pressed to a wound on her shoulder, "along with their poison device." "You're injured," Rikimaru observed, producing medical supplies from his pack. "A Russian assassin, Katerina, skilled in ways I hadn't anticipated." Ayame allowed him to examine the wound. "The device was meant to poison the water supply. I couldn't retrieve it, so I ensured it couldn't be used." Rikimaru nodded as he applied herbs to stop the bleeding. "The professor they brought to activate it. Did he survive?" "He fled when the device became unstable. He's likely with the remaining conspirators." Ayame winced as Rikimaru bandaged her shoulder. "I also saw a ninja in a red mask watching the chaos. He seemed pleased by the destruction." "Takeshi," Rikimaru said grimly. "Once our fellow Azuma. Now he calls himself the Ghost and serves the highest bidder." Ayame's eyes widened slightly, the closest she ever came to showing shock. "Takeshi lives? How?" "That scar on his face tells part of the story. The rest, he keeps to himself." Rikimaru finished the bandaging. "But his presence suggests this plot runs deeper than we realized. The device may be destroyed, but I suspect they have contingency plans." "Agreed. Himura escaped with Sebastian, and likely the professor as well." Ayame tested her shoulder, finding the bandage secure. "What did you discover?" Rikimaru shared what he had learned about the meetings throughout Kanatsu and his encounter with Takeshi at the pier. "They were too prepared, too confident," he concluded. "The device was only one component of their plan." Ayame nodded. "At dawn, the town will be in chaos, perfect cover for whatever they intend next." "Or perfect distraction," Rikimaru suggested. "With attention focused on the guild compound, they could strike elsewhere, perhaps at Lord Goda directly." A new thought occurred to them both. The autumn festival would bring Lord Goda from his castle to the provincial shrine tomorrow. The processional route would be lined with spectators, including many visitors from other provinces and foreign lands. An ideal opportunity for assassination. "We need to split up again," Ayame said, rising slowly. "I'll return to Kanatsu to find Yumiko. Now that my cover is blown, she will be in danger. And I will follow the coastal road toward the provincial shrine," Rikimaru decided. "If they plan to strike during the festival, They'll need to position assassins along the route beforehand. They shared a moment of silent understanding. Each mission carried significant danger, especially with Takeshi aware of their presence. But duty to Lord Goda outweighed personal safety. When the sun reaches its peak tomorrow, whether we have answers or not, we meet at the crossroads before the provincial shrine, Rikimaru finished. With a nod of acknowledgement, Ayame vanished into the night. He remained a moment longer, scanning the distant town where fires still burned. Then he too departed, moving swiftly toward the coastal road. Neither noticed the small mechanical device nestled among the shrine's rafters, a Western invention that had captured every word of their conversation, transmitting it to a receiver several hundred yards away. There, Takeshi sat listening, the red mask pushed up to reveal his scarred smile. Dawn brought a town transformed. The guild compound lay in ruins, smoke still rising from shattered buildings. The harbour buzzed with activity as Western ships prepared for hasty departure. Ayame moved through the chaos, using the confusion as cover. When she reached Yumiko's small home near the market district, she found the door ajar. Never a good sign. Inside, furniture lay overturned, a struggle evident. Of Yumiko herself, there was no sign, but a message had been painted on the wall in what appeared to be blood. The ghost collects his due. Follow if you dare. A trap, almost certainly, but Yumiko was their only link to whatever plans remained in motion. Ayame searched the house methodically, looking for any clue to where Takeshi might have taken her. In a small alcove, partially concealed by a fallen cabinet, she found a crumpled paper with crude maps drawn in charcoal. One showed the provincial shrine where Lord Goda would conduct the autumn festival rituals. Another depicted a mountain pass along the coastal road. Both had X marks at strategic locations. Sniper positions, Ayame realized. With the poison plan thwarted, they had reverted to a more direct approach, assassinating Lord Goda during the festival procession. She needed to warn Rikimaru, who was already scouting that very road. But first, she had to determine if Yumiko was still alive and what else she might know. A thorough examination of the house revealed drops of blood leading to the back garden, where a stone lantern had been moved aside to reveal an old well. Beside it lay a torn piece of a kimono. Ayame approached cautiously, aware this could be part of Takeshi's trap. The well was dry, its bottom visible in the early morning light. There, curled in a defensive position, lay Yumiko, alive but injured. "Ayame-san," she called weakly. "Don't come closer. He's rigged the well shaft with explosives." Ayame assessed the situation quickly. The well's interior showed signs of recently attached devices, probably activated by pressure or tripwires. "Can you move at all?" she asked. "My leg is broken," she replied. "He threw me down here, said I was bait." "Listen carefully," Ayame instructed. "I'm going to lower a rope. Tie it under your arms and try to avoid the tripwires. I'll pull you up." As she prepared the rescue, Ayame remained vigilant for Takeshi's return. The trap seemed too simple for someone of his training, which meant either he was occupied elsewhere or there was a secondary trap. She lowered the rope, and Yumiko secured it with trembling hands. Carefully, Ayame began to pull her up, watching for any sign of triggered mechanisms in the well shaft. When Yumiko was halfway up, a whistling sound split the air. Ayame moved as a thrown karma embedded itself in the wooden frame of the well, narrowly missing her head. "Always so predictable," came Takeshi's voice from the garden wall. "The Azuma training emphasizes compassion as much as killing. Your weakness." He stood balanced on the narrow wall, another karma twirling lazily in his hand. The red mask was pushed up on his head, revealing his scarred face in daylight. "Your quarrel is with me, not her," Ayame said, continuing to pull Yumiko higher despite the danger. "My quarrel is with all who serve the old ways," Takeshi replied. "Japan must change or die. Lord Goda and his kind are anchors dragging us behind while the West sails forward." "So you betray your training, your master, your honor. For what? Foreign gold?" Takeshi's expression darkened. "For survival. For the future." He gestured at his scarred face. 5 years ago, I was left for dead. The Westerners found me, healed me, showed me a world beyond our islands. Their weapons, their science, these are the new shadows we must embrace. "We searched for you," Ayame countered, stalling as Yumiko reached the top of the well. "For days, Master Shiunsai mourned you." Convenient lies. Takeshi readied his weapon. "But it doesn't matter now. Soon, Lord Goda will fall, and with him, the Azuma clan. The old gives way to the new. It is the natural order." He leapt from the wall, attacking with a combination of traditional ninja techniques and foreign movements. She met his assault with fluid precision, drawing her daggers to parry his karma. Their battle carried them across the garden, neither able to gain advantage. Takeshi fought with cold calculation, while Ayame's style emphasized adaptability and unexpected angles of attack. During a momentary separation, Ayame glanced at Yumiko, who had crawled clear of the well and was dragging herself toward the house. Takeshi noticed her divided attention and smiled. "Still protecting the weak," he taunted, still refusing to commit fully to the kill. He reached into his belt and threw several small metal objects toward the well. They struck with tiny sparks, and immediately the well shaft erupted in a chain of explosions. The blast threw Ayame backward, debris raining down around her. When she recovered, Takeshi was gone. She quickly checked on Yumiko, who had been shielded from the worst of the blast by the house's wall. The informant confirmed what Ayame had already deduced. The conspirators planned to assassinate Lord Goda during the festival procession, using hidden marksmen with Western rifles. After ensuring Yumiko would receive medical attention from neighbors, Ayame set out for the crossroads. She needed to reach Rikimaru and together stop Takeshi and his foreign allies. The coastal road wound between sea cliffs and forested hills, offering breathtaking views that belied the deadly task that awaited Rikimaru. Since dawn, he had been methodically checking every vantage point that overlooked the festival procession route. At the third such location, a rocky outcrop with clear sightlines to a narrow section of road, he found evidence of recent activity, scraps of foreign food, boot prints, and most telling, several spent rifle cartridges. A scouting party had been here, selecting positions for the assassination attempt. Rikimaru committed the location to memory and continued his search, finding 2 more similar sites before mid-morning. The pattern became clear. They had selected positions to create a gauntlet of fire that would leave Lord Goda and his guards with nowhere to run. As Rikimaru inspected the final position, an abandoned woodcutter's hut with a perfect view of the shrine approach, he sensed another presence. "Your persistence is admirable," said Brother Sebastian, emerging from behind a weathered shrine gate. The monk no longer assumed his humble demeanor. He stood straight, his posture revealing military garb beneath the simple robes. "As is your deception," Rikimaru replied, hand resting on his katana's hilt. Sebastian smiled thinly. "Not deception, merely layers of truth. I serve God and country in equal measure. By assassinating a rightful lord, by bringing poison to his people, by opening this closed kingdom to progress." Sebastian's hands remained folded in his sleeves. "Lord Goda rejects trade agreements that would benefit both our nations. His death will allow more flexible leadership to emerge. Foreign interference in Japanese succession," Rikimaru observed. "Your governments believe they can control who follows Lord Goda. We have candidates who understand the future better than he." Sebastian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Candidates who won't rely on assassins to maintain their power. How ironic that you would judge us." "I judge actions, not words, and yours will bring death to innocence." Sebastian sighed. "An unfortunate necessity, but I didn't seek you out for philosophical debate." He withdrew his hands from his sleeves, revealing not weapons, but a folded paper. "A message from your old friend. He suggested I deliver it personally to demonstrate good faith." Rikimaru made no move to accept it. "Place it on the ground and step back." The monk complied with a slight bow that bordered on mockery. "He said you would be cautious. The explosives in the compound were not our doing, by the way. Your colleague forced our hand, accelerated our timeline." "You still intend to strike during the festival?" "That information is in the message," Sebastian said, backing away. "I've fulfilled my obligation to Takeshi. The rest is between you and him." "And you believe I'll simply let you leave?" Rikimaru's hand tightened on his sword. "I believe you're intelligent enough to recognize the greater threat." Sebastian gestured toward the distant shrine where preparations for the festival would be underway. "Kill me if you must, but every moment spent here is one less available to save your precious lord." Rikimaru weighed his options quickly. Sebastian likely had valuable information, but forcing it from him would take time Rikimaru couldn't spare. "Go," Rikimaru decided. "But Japan's shadows are long and deep. If we survive today, you will eventually find mine across your path again." Sebastian bowed once more. "Until that day, then." He retreated into the forest, moving with surprising speed. Rikimaru approached the message. It was another origami crane, identical to the one Takeshi had left at the pier. "The pieces are in position," the message read. "Lord Goda will never reach the shrine. Katarina's men await at every vantage point. But the final move belongs to us, old friend. The crossroads. Noon. Settle our account before the future erases us both." Moving with urgency, Rikimaru backtracked to each sniper position he had identified. At one, he found two Westerners already in position, rifles assembled and ready. They died silently, never knowing the shadow that ended their lives. At the second position, 3 more assassins were preparing their weapons. These were more alert, one managing to fire a wild shot before Rikimaru's blade found its mark. The sound would alert any others nearby, so he worked more quickly, dispatching them and destroying their firearms. The third position held only empty evidence of preparation. Perhaps these assassins were still en route. Rikimaru set a trap that would ensure they never completed their mission, then continued toward the crossroads. The sun approached its zenith as he drew near. In the distance, he could see festival decorations along the route Lord Goda would soon travel. At the crossroads itself, autumn leaves swirled in a gentle breeze. The intersection of 4 paths, north to the provincial shrine, south to Kanatsu, east along the coastal road, and west into the deep forest, stood empty for the moment. But as Rikimaru approached, a figure emerged from the forest path. Ayame, her expression grim with purpose. They met at the center of the crossroads, exchanging quick reports of what each had discovered. Their individual missions had yielded complementary information, confirming the assassination plot and Takeshi's central role. "He wants us both here," Ayame concluded, "away from Lord Goda during the procession." "I've eliminated most of their marksmen," Rikimaru replied, "but Takeshi and Katarina remain unaccounted for." "Then we split up one final time," she decided. "One of us confronts Takeshi, the other protects Lord Goda." Before Rikimaru could respond, a soft chuckle interrupted them. Takeshi stepped from behind the large stone marker, his red mask now fully covering his face. "So predictable, yet still impressive," he said. "You've dismantled much of our operation in less than 2 days. The Western powers underestimated the Azuma, despite my warnings." "It's finished, Takeshi," Rikimaru stated. "The guild is destroyed, the poison device with it. Your assassins are dead." "Some aspects have concluded, yes," Takeshi admitted. "But adaptation is the mark of a true ninja. When the elaborate plan fails, simplicity often succeeds." He gestured toward the shrine road, where, in the distance, they could see Lord Goda's procession beginning its approach, banners visible above the crowd. "Right now, Katarina is positioning herself near your lord, disguised as a festival musician. One shot, at the perfect moment." Takeshi shrugged. "Unless, of course, you stop her." "This is your distraction," Ayame realized. "Keep us here while she completes the mission." "Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply wished to face you both one final time before I leave Japan forever." He drew his weapons. "The Western powers have promised me a position of considerable influence in their future dealings with our homeland." Rikimaru and Ayame exchanged a glance, an entire conversation passing between them in an instant. Then, to Takeshi's surprise, Rikimaru sheathed his katana. "Ayame will face you," he announced. "I will protect Lord Goda." "Both of you are needed to defeat me," Takeshi warned. "You know this." "No," Ayame replied, drawing her blades. "One Azuma is sufficient for a traitor." Without further hesitation, Rikimaru dashed toward the shrine road, leaving Ayame and Takeshi facing each other at the crossroads. Your sacrifice is pointless, Takeshi told her. He'll never reach Katarina in time. You've forgotten what Master Shiunsai taught us, Ayame responded, beginning to circle her opponent. The body achieves what the mind believes. With that, she attacked, her daggers seeking openings in Takeshi's defense. He countered with practiced precision, the karma in his hands creating deadly arcs that forced Ayame backwards. They fought vigorously, their techniques mirroring each other in many ways, products of the same training. But where Takeshi had incorporated foreign elements, Ayame had refined the traditional Azuma style to its purest essence. Her injured shoulder limited certain movements, giving Takeshi an early advantage. One of his karma sliced through her sleeve, reopening the wound Katarina had inflicted. You've lost a step, Ayame, he observed. And you've gained arrogance, she replied, suddenly dropping to a crouch and sweeping his legs. He leapt over the attack, but Ayame had anticipated this. Her follow-up strike caught him mid-air, one dagger finding the gap between his armor and piercing his side. They separated, each assessing the damage. Takeshi pressed a hand to his wound, his mask hiding his frustration. We could have ruled the shadows together, he said, voice tinged with something almost like regret. The three of us, adapting to the changing world. We serve Lord Goda and the Azuma, Ayame replied. There is honor in our path. Honor is luxury in a world transformed by gunpowder and steel. Takeshi readied himself for another exchange. The age of the ninja is ending. Accept it or perish with it. They clashed again, their combat intensifying as autumn leaves continued their gentle descent around the deadly dance. Rikimaru moved with supernatural speed along the shrine road, pushing his body to its limits. The festival crowds grew denser as he approached, forcing him to take to the rooftops and trees alongside the route. Lord Goda's procession advanced slowly, the ceremonial pace a significant disadvantage in the current situation. Guards flanked the palanquin, alert but unprepared for the specific threat Katarina represented. Scanning ahead, Rikimaru spotted musicians lining one particularly narrow section of the route. Their traditional instruments and festival masks provided perfect cover for an assassin. But which one was Katarina? He studied each figure, looking for the subtle indicators that would betray a trained killer. Most played their instruments with the practiced ease of lifelong musicians. But one, a woman playing a shamisen at the edge of the group, held the instrument awkwardly, her fingers never quite committing to the strings. As the procession approached this bottleneck, Rikimaru dropped silently from his overhead position, landing behind the musicians. The false player sensed him immediately, abandoning her pretense to whirl around, the shamisen falling away to reveal a concealed pistol, a small, lethal firearm. Katarina's eyes widened briefly in recognition, then narrowed with cold determination. You're persistent, she said quietly, careful not to draw attention from the nearby civilians. But ultimately, futile. She raised the pistol, but not toward Rikimaru, toward the approaching palanquin. At this range, even the relatively inaccurate weapon would find its mark. Rikimaru moved with precision, honed through decades of training. His hand struck her wrist, diverting the pistol upward as it discharged. The shot echoed above the festival music, causing momentary panic, but leaving Lord Goda unharmed. Guards rushed toward the sound, but Katerina was already moving, discarding the spent pistol to draw a slender blade from within her musician's robes. She slashed at Rikimaru with unexpected ferocity, her style unlike any he had faced before. "European fencing with Russian adaptations," she explained, as if reading his assessment. "Your outdated techniques are no match." Rikimaru drew his katana, aware that they now had an audience of shocked civilians and approaching guards. This would not be the clean, invisible confrontation Ninja preferred, but Lord Goda's safety took precedence over tradition. Their blades met with a clarity that cut through the festival noise. Katerina fought with cold calculation, each movement precise. But Rikimaru had faced countless opponents, adapting to styles from throughout Japan and beyond. He recognized her patterns quickly: the preference for thrusting attacks, the focus on speed over power. When she lunged with particular commitment, he sidestepped rather than parrying, allowing her momentum to carry her forward while his blade found her exposed side. The cut wasn't deep, but it was enough to stagger her. Katerina's expression shifted from confidence to something darker, the recognition that she had underestimated her opponent. "You don't need to die here," Rikimaru told her quietly. "Surrender, and Lord Goda may show mercy." Katerina laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Russians don't surrender." She reached into her robe with her free hand. "And I never come with only one plan." She threw a small black sphere toward Lord Goda's palanquin. Rikimaru recognized it immediately: a Western grenade. Without hesitation, he abandoned the fight, launching himself toward the explosive device. In one fluid motion, he snatched it from the ground and hurled it skyward, where it detonated with a thunderous boom that sent festival-goers scrambling for cover. Shrapnel rained down as guards surrounded Lord Goda, forming a protective barrier. When Rikimaru turned back, Katerina was already fleeing through the panicked crowd. He moved to pursue, but more explosions erupted along the festival route. Smaller devices planted throughout the area, causing chaos but few injuries. The diversion served its purpose, forcing Rikimaru to choose between pursuing or protecting the civilians and his lord. "Go!" Goda commanded, recognizing Rikimaru. "Stop her! We will tend to any injured civilians." Rikimaru bowed and disappeared into the confusion, moving with inhuman speed toward the crossroads, where the clash of steel grew louder. Leaves stained with blood spiraled in the autumn breeze as Ayame and Takeshi continued their lethal duel. Despite her injury, Ayame had gained the advantage through superior technique and unwavering focus. Each exchange left Takeshi more desperate, his foreign-influenced style proving insufficient against Azuma's purist traditions. "You've improved," he admitted, blood seeping from multiple wounds. "Perhaps I was wrong to underestimate you." "The Azuma way endures because it adapts without losing its essence," Ayame replied, circling for the final strike. "Something you never understood." She lunged to his side before attacking from an unexpected angle. Takeshi barely parried, stumbling backward. In that moment of imbalance, Ayame struck, knocking away one of his karma and driving him to the ground with a slash to the back of his knee. With her dagger poised at his throat, Ayame removed his mask to reveal the scarred face beneath. "Any last words before you answer for your betrayal?" Takeshi's eyes showed no fear, only resignation. The world is changing, Ayame. Sooner or later, we all must. The sharp crack of a pistol shot cut him off. White-hot pain exploded in Ayame's side as the bullet tore through her body. She staggered, her dagger falling from suddenly numb fingers. From the eastern path emerged Katerina, a thin trail of smoke rising from the barrel of her pistol. "Sentiment," she said coldly, beginning to reload the single-shot weapon with practiced efficiency. Always the downfall of the honorable. Takeshi rose slowly, recovering his fallen karma. "I told you the world is changing," he said, voice strained, "along with the weapons of war." Ayame pressed a hand to her wound, blood seeping between her fingers as she struggled to maintain consciousness. The gunshot had taken her completely by surprise, a weapon against which traditional techniques offered little defense. Katerina completed reloading her pistol, raising it deliberately toward Ayame's heart. "A shame to waste such talent," she remarked. "But loose ends must be tied." Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then a whistling sound cut the air. A kunai struck Katerina's hand with perfect precision, sending the pistol clattering to the ground. She cried out, clutching her bleeding hand as she and Takeshi whirled toward this new threat. Rikimaru materialized from the shadows of the forest path, his katana raised. "It seems I arrived just in time," he said, his quiet voice carrying across the crossroads. "This changes nothing," Takeshi snarled, though his stance betrayed both injury and uncertainty. "The future still belongs to us." "Perhaps," Rikimaru acknowledged, "but not today." He moved toward them with measured steps. Even wounded, Katerina remained dangerous, and Takeshi had always been formidable. But the determination in Rikimaru's eyes made both hesitate. "This isn't finished," Takeshi told his former comrades. "What began here will echo across Japan for years to come." Without warning, Katerina threw a flash grenade of Western design that erupted with blinding intensity. When the light cleared, both assassins had vanished. Rikimaru rushed to Ayame's side, applying pressure to her wound. "Lord Goda is safe," he told her. "The immediate threat is neutralized." "They escaped," Ayame said, frustration evident despite her pain. "To fight another day," Rikimaru agreed, "as will you, once we tend to this wound." He lifted her carefully, mindful of her injuries. "The shadows may change shape," he said, "but the Azuma will adapt. We always have." Ayame's hand tightened on his arm. "Takeshi was right about one thing," she said softly. "The world is changing." "Then we will change with it," Rikimaru replied, "while keeping our core principles intact." Together, they departed the blood-stained crossroads, leaving only disturbed leaves and crimson-splashed dust as evidence of the battle that had occurred. The autumn festival concluded without further incident, though Lord Goda doubled the guard throughout the province in the weeks that followed. Formal complaints were lodged with the Western powers whose representatives had participated in the conspiracy, though all expressed shock and denied official involvement. Ayame recovered slowly from her injuries, adapting her training to account for new types of weapons she might face in future conflicts. Rikimaru spent increased time scouting the coastal areas, vigilant for signs of Takeshi or Katerina's return. The Western professor, discovered attempting to flee aboard a Russian vessel, received unexpected mercy from Lord Goda. Rather than execution, he was installed at a remote mountain monastery where selected Japanese scholars could learn from his knowledge under careful supervision. A measured approach to adopting useful Western science while rejecting its more destructive applications. On a cool evening 1 month after the conspiracy's defeat, Rikimaru and Ayame knelt before Lord Goda in his private chambers. "My faithful shadows," he acknowledged. "Our victory was incomplete, but significant nonetheless. Takeshi and the Russian woman escaped," Ayame said, her side still bandaged beneath her garments. "They will return. And when they do, we will be ready," Rikimaru added. Lord Goda nodded. "My sources report they have fled to the mainland, China or perhaps Russia itself, but messages intercepted from Western ships suggest they are already planning their return." "With more foreign weapons?" Ayame asked. "And tactics we may not anticipate," Goda confirmed. "The world beyond our shores grows more complex with each passing season. We must maintain our traditions while understanding these new threats." He presented each ninja with a small lacquered box. Inside lay various Western devices of unknown uses. "Adaptation without compromise," Lord Goda explained. "These were recovered from the guild compound. Learn them, use them if you wish." As they departed the castle, Rikimaru and Ayame paused at a ridge overlooking the ocean. In the harbour below, new ships had arrived, their strange flags rippling in the night breeze. "They will come again," Ayame said, watching the distant lanterns of foreign vessels. "Takeshi, Katerina, or others like them." "And we will meet them," Rikimaru replied, "whether in light or shadow." A plume of smoke rose from one of the Western ships, perhaps a signal, perhaps merely steam. Whatever mysteries it heralded would wait for another day. For now, the shadows beckoned, and the Azuma ninja answered their call, disappearing into the darkness that was both their home and their greatest ally.